Had James Traficant on for the entire second hour of the show today. That'll be on the free podcast, served up at the end of the show. It'll be reposted in higher quality at prisonplanet.tv for members. A huge interview, a news-making interview. What incredible courage he's got. That's why we're standing beside him and behind him here. So that is coming up in an hour and 27 minutes when the official live radio broadcast ends. Of course, I'll also be back live this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Don't forget the free iTunes application. It's got 5 stars, hundreds and hundreds of ratings at iTunes since we launched it a week ago. What is it, like 10,000 plus downloads of it? It needs to be a lot more than that. It's absolutely free. Tell your friends and family that have iPhones or Apple about it. It's a great system. It streams a lot better than some of the other free systems that have our show where it's in larger listings. We do have other things like Flycast that have the show. We have links to where you can find us there. That's all at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Now, we're going to go back into the economy here in about 10 minutes, but Mike Rivero has been kind enough to join us because, again, this building got hit at about 9:55 Central. I learned about it about 10:30 when I got into work, and we've been all over the map. Before they said Tea Party, before they tried to blame it, I said it's a government building. Watch them try to blame it on the Tea Party. I was right about that. Then we have a source that said the FBI was dispatched into Austin about a threat to a government building. They don't know specifically because it was another department. They just saw it and saw them leave. Could that be something else? Who knows? But we know we've played the KXAN piece where the woman said, I saw the emergency vehicles out here beforehand. I talked to multiple listeners who called in, and we've talked to some of them off air as well. And I mean, masses of calls here to the office in the comment line that, yeah, there were emergency people out there before, and we heard the boom. Some saw them before, others heard the boom, and then went out and saw the police out there with cameras already within seconds. Did they know a threat was coming? They weren't sure. Were they on alert? They were having terror drills the day before with FEMA and Homeland Security in the city of Austin. In fact, bring me that city of Austin document. I forgot and left it in there. So we don't know what's going on, but Bob Chapman seems to think this was just if somebody fed up. Traficant's leaning towards that. And I wasn't leaning really towards that. I wasn't sure. We were looking at everything until I began to notice, and I noticed then Rivero also, because he's worked with the media, he recognized this, that real terror attacks or real attacks against government, they tend to ignore. This was so big they couldn't ignore it, but that suddenly it kind of left the news cycle today. It was gone. With the underwear bomber we know was staged, it never left the news cycle, and they had something they were pushing. Like they're staging fake cyber attacks right now to get through the Senate. No doubt that's fake and staged. So I wanted to get Mike Rivero's take on what he thinks going on here and then pop back in with Bob Chapman, who's with us as well right now. Mike Rivero joining us via video Skype from Hawaii. Good to have you here with us.
Thanks an awful lot for having me on your show, Alex.
Okay, give us your bottom line on, with all the evidence this early on, we're not sure, but what you think's going on.
Well, I'm definitely leaning toward thinking this was a genuine, spontaneous action by this gentleman who he's just an ordinary working American, and he got pushed to his limit, and he snapped, and we all have a breaking point. And I think the media was attempting to spin this to make him look like a demon and a bad guy, and then when that really wasn't working, my concern was that the media was going to try and pull away the focus as quickly as possible, which, as you point out, they're doing today. It's all Tiger Woods all the time. And I think what's in there is we need to understand that from the point of view of the government and the media, their big priority right now, they don't want people actually reading this guy's suicide note. They're calling it a manifesto to make it sound like it's a bad thing because the commies had a manifesto and the Unabomber had a manifesto. So this is a manifesto and you shouldn't go read it. But everybody who's actually read this suicide note, nobody condones what Joe Stack did. But everybody seems to say, I understand why he did it. We are all at that breaking point. We're seeing the work of a lifetime being taken away from us, under threat of force, spent on wars, spent on corruption, spent on Israel.
And much of Congress and Geithner in the White House don't even pay taxes.
That's exactly right. And that's further annoying a lot of people. And we've got callers into our show from people who've been thrown out of their homes by the IRS. The woman called into the show. Her veteran husband had been neglected by the VA for 9 months, came down with cancer. The week he died, the IRS took her bank accounts. It's just a horrific story out there. And everybody understands what this guy was feeling. They don't agree with what he did, but they understand where
That's right. It was bad enough. It was bad enough with the IRS outside outside the law, no due process, robbing everybody before for the private Federal Reserve. But now everybody's starting to go bankrupt or on the edge of bankrupt, and they don't even have money for gas or food. And now the government's taken the house. The only thing they've got or their little bank account with $500 in it. Here's Rasmussen last week. 75% of Americans are angry at government current policies. And you know that's a low number. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, you're right. Most people are still trying to be polite and say, yes, I'm a loyal American. And there was a survey they did about, is it okay to cheat on your taxes? And I expect probably most people lied on that one as well because they're afraid of, they're afraid of the IRS. The IRS is the instrument of terror in our society. And again, nobody's condoning what Joe Stack did, but everybody who has written into my show or called into my show, they understand why he did it. I have not heard a single word of sympathy from anybody regarding the IRS in this affair.
Talking to you this morning on the phone, you were saying the government's scared.
Yes, absolutely. Because if there's one thing that Joe Stack has accomplished, it's kind of in a positive sense, it has made the abuses of the IRS acceptable in polite conversation. People are now willing to talk about how many of them are in serious trouble with the IRS. You've seen the flood of TV commercials for all these tax resolution services. That alone tells you that most of Americans are in some kind of tax trouble. And now, because of Joe, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to talk about the abuses of the IRS. People are even now openly talking about, was the 16th Amendment actually ratified? Are the taxes illegal right from the start? I understand Jim Traficant, and by the way, please give him my highest regards when you have him on the show. He's talking about if he gets elected back to Congress, he wants to kick the IRS in a very sensitive portion of the genitalia. So, and I think most Americans are going to sign up with him on that.
In your mind, is there any way this could have been an inside job? Because we know they can remote control aircraft. We know that they were out there beforehand. Something was going on. We know the underwear bomber was staged. I mean, this is the season. I've been predicting an attack in Austin from activities I've been seeing. They need to demonize the Tea Parties. They certainly jumped on this within 3 hours of it happening, and I predicted they would and said the Tea Parties. I mean, here's the New York Daily News. Kamikaze pilot Joe Stack crash plane into Austin building hailed by anti-government groups. And they say in here that I'm hailing it. Austin American Statesman, in an article, social media speeds up news gathering in plane crash aftermath, says that I was hailing the attack. I was saying maybe staged, or we don't know. Or so I'm being singled out here. They're certainly trying to put this on us.
Well, they're putting it on you. They're putting it on Glenn Beck. They're putting it on me. They're putting it on Rush Limbaugh. They're looking to basically take the focus off the letter. As for the exact nature of it, I'm 95% convinced it was a genuine, spontaneous act by this gentleman. If it was a false flag attack, it's a very poorly thought out one because the patsies that are supposed to be framed for it, it's not a very good case. And in this case, back when the Oklahoma City bomb went off and little kids were being killed and everybody was shocked and said, oh, this is a terrible thing, they're not getting that reaction here. The attitude of most of America is, well, yeah, it's a bad thing, but maybe they sort of.
But to be clear, you've done the research. Oklahoma City inside job, underwear bomber inside job, 9/11 inside job, Operation Ajax inside job, Gulf of Tonkin inside job, Operation Northwoods inside job.
Gulf of Tonkin was not an inside job. It was a deliberate misinterpretation of the available information.
But that is still an inside job to say you've been attacked and it's made up as a pretext for war. What I'm saying is staged provocation.
Well, definitely a lot of propaganda and a lot of lying and misstatement. There were no torpedoes there. But in the case of yesterday's attack, I think they were trying to take something that happened genuinely and attempt to use it for propaganda purposes, and they didn't get the traction with it. It just doesn't feel like it was planned or known about ahead of time. They just tried to take advantage of it, and they didn't really get it to work. That's what it feels like to me.
Let's bring Bob Chapman in. Bob, your comments on this.
Well, first of all, I think it could, unfortunately, bring about other such events. And for all of you who are listening out there, please keep your cool. Talk to somebody about a problem. I mean, everybody out there's got problems now. Some are worse than others. I know it's compelling when you lose everything you have, but we have a society that we shouldn't be running around killing ourselves. And usually the only people who do that are people who become unbalanced, and there are reasons for that. But the point is, don't let this get you carried away. Secondly, in the International Forecaster, I guess it was 2 issues back, maybe 3, and I had a piece in there about Remington taking an order, and I can't remember how many.
It was shotguns for the IRS.
Yeah, these are sawed-off shotguns.
Yeah.
I mean, 14 inches is a sawed-off shotgun. And I think that the IRS obviously is terrified that people are going to react against them.
Yeah, for those that don't know, a sawed-off is generally defensive, so people that don't know what they're doing can just aim in a general direction when you're getting rushed.